What's up, everybody? Welcome to yet another edition of Mosher's Mailbag. Obviously, the Eagles are coming off a huge win, 30-23 over the Los Angeles Rams. They're back in that playoff race. Believe it or not, going into Sunday's game against the Houston Texans, the Eagles still have a very remote chance of winning the NFC East. They have to win out. The Cowboys have to lose out against Tampa Bay and the Giants. The Eagles would have to beat the Texans and the Redskins, but as I've always said, stranger things can happen. We all know the wild card is still in play, potentially the fifth seed, but more likely the sixth seed. But the bottom line is the Eagles just got to win. So I'd like to welcome all my new subscribers. I want to thank all my Patreons who have been here from the start and everybody who has submitted questions for me for Mosher's Mailbag. I have a lot of fun doing this. So look forward to keep doing it throughout the season and in the off season. Just remember, keep messaging me your questions through Patreon. We have a lot of people who like to ask questions once a week. Sometimes I get new guys come in, or new people, I should say, come in and ask questions. But just I always send out a message through Patreon saying to ask me your questions. But you don't have to wait for me. Just send them as soon as you got them, and I'll try to answer them every Friday. All right, so two really good questions this week. The first one came from Keith W., and he asks, assuming he says that everything stays the same from a coaching staff and Mike Rowe is still here and Doug Peterson is here, what can we look for in the offense going forward? What kind of changes will be made? It's really not a question that has one answer, Keith. I think the biggest thing is that the Eagles have lacked this year is that speed threat opposite Alshon Jeffrey. You saw in the Los Angeles Rams game that Nick Foles is very trustworthy of Alshon. He'll throw it up. He'll use him in jump ball manners, back shoulder manners. Carson Wentz, I've written about this, is less reluctant to do that for whatever reason. And maybe the back was preventing him from throwing the ball down the field and trusting Alshon with those heaves. But even going back to last year when Carson played like an MVP, he would target Alshon in maybe slants and deep digs and certain plays within the confines of the offense. But you did not see the jump ball or the back shoulder fade that Alshon made his living off. That's all a roundabout way of saying that Alshon makes plays himself. He's not necessarily a speed guy, but you saw last year how the offense functioned when you had Alshon on the left side, Torrey Smith, who didn't catch a lot of passes but had the speed to draw defenders his way, get a penalty interference flag. They really missed that. When they brought Golden Tate in, this is another thing I've written about, Golden Tate plays a style similar to Nelson Aguilar. They're both basically inside receivers. They can play on the outside, but it's not where they function best. So they really need to figure out a way to get more speed on the outside. Apologies if you hear my dog barking in the background. I'll try to fix that. But the biggest thing they need to do is get some speed threat back to the opposite side of Alshon Jeffrey. Now, maybe they can bring back Mike Wallace on a one-year deal again, since he basically had all of this past year gone. If they still think that he's, effective speed receiver coming off this injury, hopefully Mac Hollins will put this whole injury-plagued year behind him, come back and add that downfield threat that he had in college. But it wouldn't surprise me if the Eagles also look toward free agency, somebody with some speed, a little veteran. It was Torrey Smith 2 years ago. It was Mike Wallace ideally this year. Next year, it could be somebody else. Deshaun Jackson, I believe he's going to be a free agent. So you never know, but I do think that they need to address, it could be in the draft, a speed receiver opposite Alshon Jeffrey. But that's not obviously the only thing that I think that they would need to change. Clearly, in my mind, we have to discover still, we have a couple of weeks and maybe the playoffs, what kind of running back Josh Adams is. Can he be a three-down running back? Can he catch the ball? Can he continue to pick up blitzes, chip block? Can he stay healthy? That's a big thing. He's always seemingly on the injury report. He came to the Eagles with an injury, and even when he plays, he leaves with, either a back, or I know he was tested for a concussion. He's had lots of different nagging injuries. You get that with a guy who's 230 pounds and runs into contact as opposed from away from it. The Eagles have put a lot of homework into running backs over the last few years. All of them. They've brought them all in. They've had a lot of interest, but, as we've talked about a lot, the best they came out with in the draft was Donnell Pumphrey, which was not good at all. Now, they did hit on Corey Clement as an undrafted free agent, and they seemingly found something in Josh Adams as a rookie free agent. But I really think for this offense to be at its maximum potential, to be dangerous, to be lethal and explosive again, I think that they need a three-down running back. They need their version of Kareem Hunt or Alvin Kamara, Saquon Barkley, Ezekiel Elliott. I'm not saying they have to get a top 5 running back, but they have to get a running back with that supreme level of skills, and you can find it anywhere. Kamara and Hunt were 3rd-round picks. Tariq Cohen in Chicago, 4th-round pick. I think they need that kind of guy. All right, so the wide receiver, the running back, I don't think anything about the concept of the offense will change. I think the personnel will have to change, like I said, and that will open up things for the offense. And I would say this, I think Doug will have to figure out a way in the offseason to get more out of Dallas Goedert. He's been playing a lot of 2 tight ends lately, but he'll use Goedert as a blocker. I think he has to figure out a way to get Goedert more open as a pass catcher, or at least targeted as a pass catcher, because he is a very good tight end. He has great yard after the catch skills, probably even better than Zach Ertz, and they have to get him involved in the offense. Anything else? And obviously, if you have a chance to upgrade the offensive line and draft a free agency, I think they're going to have to do that too. Jason Peters, in my mind, will probably not be back. I think Sayamalu will be there at left guard. Most likely, Kelsey will be there at center. I don't think they're ready to move on yet, and then move Sayamalu to center. That may be down the road. At right guard, Brandon Brooks. His interesting thing on Brandon Brooks, we have to watch how this develops. He's now made the Pro Bowl for 2 straight years. He's a very good player. His salary triples. I think it goes from something from like 6 or 7 million to 19 or 20 million. Something very, very ridiculous as far as the jump from one price to another. And the Eagles are already projected to be over the cap next year. I don't know what they're going to do in this situation, because it's hard. You saw with Vinny Curry, who had a very good year last year, but they just felt like they couldn't afford him. I don't know what they do there. I know that they drafted the kid Matt Pryor out of TCU, and they really liked him, and he's been practicing at guard all year long. He hasn't played, but they're going to have to figure something out, because Brandon Brooks at that price tag is keepable, but that means somebody else that we're thinking of may have to go. So that's going to be an issue that I'll be writing about in the offseason. That was a mouthful. I pretty much just went through the whole offense there. Second question comes from Frank G. And kind of, a personnel-related question. He asks, what will be the fates after the year? What's up with all these after-the-year questions? The Eagles are in the playoff, or in a playoff chase here. Is there a little faith going on here? Anyway, Frank asked that what are going to be the fates of Brandon Graham, Michael Bennett, and Tim Jernigan? And he mentions that you could do a lot worse if you don't bring them back. So let's take all 3 of them individually. Brandon Graham has spoken publicly about wanting to test free agency, about wanting to be paid like a very good pass rusher. He's in the last year this year of the deal that he signed when Chip Kelly brought him back. I believe it was a 5-year deal, maybe 4-year deal. Either way, he's going to be a free agent at the end of this year. And I know personally, and I've reported in the past, that there have been talks between Brandon and his camp and the team going back to last year at the Combine about an extension. He was hoping to get an extension going into this year so he could finish out his career as an Eagle. There was an offer made. It was not satisfactory to the Brandon Graham camp. And so Brandon is, if you talk to him, he'll tell you he's more than willing to go ahead and say, I've had a great Eagles career, but I want to test free agency and really see what I can get. Now, he's obviously going to be – he's 30 years old, which isn't old but not young. It's that age where Eagles used to let guys go and say we got the most out of them. But if you've studied Brandon's career and watched him, he's a darn good player. He doesn't look like he's lost much. So I would say that his camp is pretty sure that he can secure a very good deal on the free agent market. The question is, can he get somewhere in the 12 to 15 million a year neighborhood that you see some of the top pass rushers make? In free agency, anything can happen. I never like to say he can or can't because I've seen some crazy, crazy contracts given out in free agency. I've also seen the opposite where pass rushers, for whatever reason in certain years, or linemen in whatever reason in certain years, the market isn't as bountiful as you would think that it would be, or as it normally would be. In fact, if you go all the way back to like 2014, when the Seahawks signed Cliff Averill and Michael Bennett, who were 2 pillars in them winning a Super Bowl, they got both of those guys for a pretty decent price on the free agent market. That was just one of those years where pass rushers didn't make a whole lot of money, and the Seahawks were able to profit off that and bring in 2 really good players who were instrumental in them winning a Super Bowl. So we'll see. My overall take with Brandon is he's going to talk a big game. He's going to go out there in free agency and test it and see what he can get. And if he gets a really big deal that he wants and it doesn't come from the Eagles, he'll take it. But I always feel like Brandon still has one foot inside the door, because the last time he was in free agency, it was all but assured he was going to leave, and he wound up coming back to the Eagles. So he likes it here. He loves it here. I know that. He loves being a Philadelphia Eagle, and we'll just see if the money that some other team offers just completely blows the Eagles away. They'll have the opportunity because the Eagles don't have a lot of money. And I wouldn't blame Brandon 1 minute for taking the best offer that's on the table. But while it's assumed that he's out the door, I always say with Brandon, I would just keep the door a little bit open no matter what you hear. Let's move on to Michael Bennett. I believe they restructured his deal when they acquired him so that he is on the team under contract at least for 2019. The Eagles probably have him at a pretty good rate. I can check and write about it soon. I'll write something about that soon. But I'm pretty sure in 2019 he's under contract, and it's not going to be something that's so cost debilitating that the Eagles are going to have to release him. They should bring him back. He has 8.5 sacks, I believe, this year. 8 sacks. He leads the team with 8 sacks, which is kind of what his average has been over the last few years, and yet he's played a lot fewer snaps. So the formula of Bennett, who played a ridiculous amount of snaps in Seattle, pretty much 89% of the defense, to come here, play 60% of the defense, and still be fresh and have as many sacks, that's worked really well. I think he and Fletcher Cox are right now the best, one of the best. I mean, you'll see a good one this Sunday with Houston, and as far as J.J. Watt and Jadeveon Clowney. But right now, Michael Bennett and Fletcher Cox rank number 2 and number 3, respectively, in the NFL in quarterback hits, right under Aaron Donald. So they're having great years, and if Jim Schwartz is your defensive coordinator, then it's a pretty good idea to make sure that Michael Bennett and Fletcher Cox are back, especially if you're going to lose Brandon Graham. Tim Jernigan, interesting story. I think that's undecided. As we've talked about and as I've reported in the past, he had to restructure his entire contract after his offseason workout mishap, whatever it was that happened, that led to him having back surgery. So all of his money, it went from guaranteed to base salary, which is not guaranteed. So he's kind of playing for next year right now. It didn't help his cause that he came back, played all right, and then missed 2 games. So these last 2 games in the playoffs are, I would say, fairly gigantic for Tim Jernigan. He needs to play if he can. He needs to make an impact, and he needs to prove to the Eagles that he deserves to be back and make the money that he's not guaranteed, but that is part of his base salary for next year. If not, that's just another defensive line position area, interior lineman that the Eagles will be needing to upgrade in the offseason. So I think they're best when Tim Jernigan and Fletcher Cox are in the middle. So don't just root for the Eagles, root for Tim Jernigan's back to be healthy and for Tim Jernigan to be a very productive player here for as many games as the Eagles have left. All right, that's going to do it for this edition of Mosher's Mailbag. Thank you to all of you who asked questions. Happy holidays, everybody. If you celebrate Hanukkah, I hope you had a great one. If you celebrate Christmas, Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, and good luck, and have a great weekend, and we'll see what happens with the Eagles against the Texans. All right, everyone, take care.